Welcome. Commercial broadcasting tends to get most of the attention when it comes to radio or TV, but it certainly has its limitations. And in part, much of that involves the business models, which inevitably and understandably are centered around turning a profit. But in Canada and in other places around the globe, there are alternatives. In this episode of Broadcast Chronicles, we'll talk about community radio and where it fits in on the dial and online. CIVL Radio, the campus station at the University of the Fraser Valley, is now celebrating 20 plus years in operation. Our next guest is Executive Director, Station Manager, Aaron Levy.
Broadcast Chronicles, revealing the most surprising, compelling, and even shocking stories behind some true characters from the other side of the microphone. Here's Bruce Clagan.
Aaron Levy is deeply connected to the Fraser Valley, a fixture with independent musicians and those finding new ways to reach audiences, whether through radio, podcasting, or documentary filmmaking. It's my pleasure to chat with you, Aaron, but let's start with talking about CIVL, the successful community radio station that you manage at the University of the Fraser Valley.
So CIVL it's the youngest, it's the newest campus radio station in Canada. And by that, I mean, there has not been another one since we implemented in 2010, which was when UFV students were licensed by the CRTC and approved to broadcast on FM radio, then at 101.7 FM, and now on 92.3, thankfully, as well in Chilliwack. But in order to provide and lower the barrier to accessibility for broadcasters, Bruce, you, yourself, myself, many others in the industry, in the sector, as we call it in campus community radio, we have various levels of training, professionalism, experience, networking, connections, and status of various sorts, privileges, one might say, that get us access to the broadcast network on FM radio and on AM radio, or that get us access to television, news, and opportunities like that. And that's what the way commercial professional broadcast works, is a bit of a meritocracy, and who you know is very important as well, right? And the purpose and role of campus community radio is to kind of cut out those barriers. I'm calling them barriers now, right? The need to have the education, the skill, the experience, the training. At campus community radio, we have staff, we have volunteers whose goal and roles all revolve around providing any individual in the community who has something important to say, the resources and support to say it. And to cover it, and whether it's playing the music they like that nobody else hears on the radio, because it's going to be hard to sell oranges with that kind of music, because it's niche, or maybe it's stories that are ones that we don't hear. You know, we often hear in a bipolar world from politics. We hear either the right side or the left side, or the Republican or the Democrat or the conservative or liberal. And we want to have more nuanced discussions that don't fit into those paradigms. And that's what campus community radio is.
You know, there are people that do say campus community radio is all that left-wing garbage that's out there that really doesn't represent the community at all. What do you say to those people? True, or is there some truth in that, or let's be honest?
I mean, certainly there's a strong left-wing bent to the campus community radio. That's the lane, quote unquote, that you end up being in that world much of the time. The same as the commercial broadcasters have a right-wing bent, because they're based on selling advertising and having commercial corporate partnerships. They're owned by commercial corporations that have very, finance and administrative and risk management oriented operations, because that's what's required to make money and be successful today. And at Campus Community Radio, it's our job to recognize that, and recognize that we're here for an alternative as a whole. My job, and something that I've taken really seriously, is making sure that we don't only personally represent the left-wing garbage. I love some of the left-wing garbage, personally. And I don't know what you would call left-wing garbage compared to what somebody else would. And we all have different nuanced political perspectives, and we also often fit into our neat little groups that can fall into our echo chambers, both on the left and on the right. But personally, as somebody who I've drank the Kool-Aid of accessibility.
Yeah.
And to me, that means accessibility of the right and the left. So, anybody who wanted to say that CIVL is a place of left-wing garbage, I'll step into it here and say that one of the Canadian mavens of the alt-right and of beyond neoliberalism and anti-immigration and anti-abortion sentiment is Lauren Southern, who 10 years ago was first on the radio. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she's a very popular influencer. She's kind of quieted down lately, but when she bubbles up, there are articles in the press about it. She's a notable individual. She got her start at CIVL Radio, and she had a right-wing perspective, and she had she's famous now for being, like I said, anti-immigration, anti-trans, anti-abortion, these kinds of things. Why I don't need feminism was one of her biggest things, and one of her original kind of viral bits. And that's completely against the liberal left-wing garbage. And we didn't stop her from sharing a perspective. We worked with her to do it in a way that could be playing nice in the sandbox, for lack of a better word. And maybe I'm minimalizing the importance of the kind of topics she was talking about and squaring those with the liberal left. But as far as that's something that all of us can do in campus radio, is be open to people who have even diametrically opposed views to us and work with them to still bring those issues into the dialogue.
Academic freedom taken to the radio.
Free speech is free speech. Free speech is free speech, right? And we'll decide. There's different wings of free speech now on the right and left. But I think what I'm talking about was truly free speech. And certainly you're not wrong. There are, I won't name them, campus radio stations in the country that will, willingly weed you out because you don't align with their perspective, and I think there's a place. Because we're weeded out, cancel culture has been alive for decades. People on the left have experienced cancel culture for decades. And now it's a topic and we have a name to it. And the right is very upset about it. And
I am jealous, Aaron, because you are able to play in a space where you can be, or should be, a shit disturber. I would hope that
I didn't say
some
it.
of that
I didn't
out
say
there.
it. But I'm sure anybody who works with me in the city of Abbotsford at the university are going to say that Bruce can call it what it is and sees it for what it is. It's unfortunate that that's, to me, that's the cards I'm dealt doing the work that I'm doing. I don't see myself as a shit disturber. I see myself.
I say that as a good thing. I think that can be pushing limits.
So I'm here to push limits in certain ways, and the only limits I want to push is the internal limits. Is the we can't talk about these things because we're not comfortable or ready to. We're afraid, not that we shouldn't for any reason, but that we're resistant to, and that's that's the role of campus community radio in certain ways. It's because, look, we don't do that in the commercial sphere because it's not popular. It's not functional for selling, and it's not functional for keeping the most ears and eyeballs, right? We need in commercial and in the economic world that is trying to build our GDP, our security financially, and our sovereignty financially as individuals and as a community. It's nearly impossible to do that and also take into account the nuanced views, perspectives, right? At least not in a capitalist culture. In China, they do things like that. They throw spaghetti at the wall and they fund everything to see what works, and nothing's off limits. And here we're very quote unquote conservative with the way we invest our funds. We want a winner every time. But that makes sense because we're in a culture that needs it. We're in a culture that's just going to tune out.
Aaron, how do you measure success then? What is great success for CIVL? from your eyes or your ears?
Yeah, I mean, impact is important to me. The sad thing about we've done this documentary, we didn't spend so much time really getting into the individual stories and connections. I'm a social, I maybe my partner is a social worker and therapist. She might not appreciate my saying this, or she may acknowledge through seeing my work every day that I am a social worker. And most of us at campus community radio stations in Canada, we are social workers. We're not only producing content, but we're preparing people to have the skills to be in the place to share that important content that's coming from deep inside of them and their history, their culture, their background, their community. And it's not easy all the time. Some people we work with for a year to learn the tech aspects. Sometimes we work with them for a year to learn the aspects of writing and communication that make compelling content. And when you take that, training somebody, getting to know somebody, helping them in their life on a day-to-day basis, helping them find meaning, but not so much meaning like they don't have it, but a new important piece of their life that connects with others at the same time, like we all know and love radio for doing. The way that those relationships happen, and I got to credit the college program I went to at Conestoga with fellas like Tim Gable and Paul Scott and Mike Thurnell there, who ran the program for a long time now. It's Carlos Benavides, formerly of my favorite, The Edge, back in the day before the 2000s when they started playing Linkin Park. But he's leading the program there now. But the soft skills in terms of working with people and knowing people, caring about people, connecting with them, and not doing so as a buzzword or a sales pitch or public relations, that's really important. And that's a key part of community campus radio is people feel like when they walk into CIVL, they're getting today a plethora of things they're not getting other places on campus and in the community, which is understanding, freedom, agency, safety, opportunities, support, friendship and mentorship that's patient and honest. And that's, I think, what heuristically the vision and ideals of campus community radio in Canada for 40 plus years is focused on. And that's what I meant when I'm most proud of.
Radio gives a voice. And if everything you are saying requires a voice, well, I think radio or online radio or podcasting, they all do that. And it's important. And there is value in that. Now, for the past 20 years, there has been success. I mean, CIVL has been around and you've celebrated that. You hinted about it, mentioned it a bit. Counterculture, 20 years of CIVL radio in the Fraser Valley is the documentary. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, we got grateful for Campus Community Radio has a lever, an opportunity, and a mechanism through the Community Radio Fund of Canada. It was started by members of the National Community Campus Radio Association about 15, 20 years ago, and it is a source for CCD, Canadian Content Development funding from commercial broadcasters and the federal government that provides grant funding to campus community radio stations across the country. I made an application in 2020, just before the pandemic, to get $50,000 to tell the story of 20 years of campus community radio at UFV. And we were grateful to receive the funding. It took us 5 years. It was supposed to take one. What ultimately, though, June 17th, 2005 is when the society was incorporated. It took 5 years to get broadcasting and implemented on 101.7 FM. And 15 years later, it's been 20 years as a society. And we're really excited on June 19th to debut the final documentary. We did like a test debut as part of UFV's 50th anniversary celebration. In April, we're making some updates, and then June 19th, it'll be 2 years, 20 years and 2 days after the incorporation of the society. It's a BC nonprofit that will tell its story from the humble beginnings of UFV students trying to communicate on campus to we've stepped into the void of commercial radio. This is really a success I should have answered you with. is that in the last 5 years, we've given away $50,000 to local Fraser Valley artists. This is the kind of level of financial contribution that we used to see from the Edge in Toronto or the Peak in Vancouver that we don't see anymore. We've stepped in here and made that immense contribution, and that Fraser Valley Music Awards, that those $50,000 have gone out as a part of the last 5 years. That initiative 10 years ago was also funded by the Community Radio Fund of Canada, starting in 2016 with another $50,000 that year.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Aaron, because I've talked to plenty of artists and some people, even like Biff Naked, who mentioned that, hey, Bruce, community radio really is important. And I think there is a feeling that commercial radio is great once you're successful, but what about those early days? Tell me where you fit into that.
Well, we're really glad. We've had Biff on CIVL multiple times. She's an honorary degree recipient from UFV in the past, and she's one of the artists that I knew growing up watching much music in the 90s, which fewer and fewer of us can identify with as the years go by. But to see her now as kind of like a classic Canadian icon who's made a contribution in the community is great. She's taken that life cycle you allude to of an artist after gaining name recognition, then developing and devoting herself to issues, causes, and engagement. It's really, I wouldn't have expected her to say that for her to be a champion of campus community radio that way. But of course, yeah, I mean, look, we are training grounds. It is possible. Some people would think it is the minor leagues of the CBC. I don't love that implication, but certainly, it's a place where, again, the barriers removed, and there are certainly training wheels involved, both for the practitioner of radio, the broadcaster, and for the artist or the business person who's trying to launch their public relations campaign, finding out what it's like to negotiate advertising, finding out what it's like to review the results and the KPIs and the ROIs that you get. I tell anybody, if you want to be on the board of Coca-Cola, then being on the board of a campus community radio station will give you the experience with Robert's Rules of Order, agendas, minutes, finances, elections, decisions, and budgeting, all of these things. And that's true for an artist like Biff Naked, or an artist who wants to be like Biff Naked, who wants to play their music on the air, represent their music to the broadcasting world, see what the packaging, what the mail out, what the reach out looks like, what developing one-to-one relationships look like, and getting involved in a community as well. People talk about, not people talk about, but I think of like the Arcade Fire in 2004 when I enrolled at the University of Guelph. The Arcade Fire had played the Hillside Festival in Guelph the previous summer. There was a buzz around the community. We had their DIY handmade EPs in the studio library, and we played them. And it just so happened the month that I enrolled at the University of Guelph, they were playing the second week of my term, of my semester, but also the very week that I started classes, Pitchfork gave them a 9.7 on the album Funeral. Pitchfork was just becoming a media entity that would rule the critical and promotional world of music for the next 10, 15 years, depending on how long you thought it was cool for. And the impact of that is sold out Arcade Fire shows. They're with David Bowie, Bruce Springsteen in the next year. And then they later, that very next year, they play the Hillside Festival. So 1 year after, they very quietly did a little workshop and people on campus were talking about it. They were the huge headliner with Broken Social Scene at the Hillside Festival, and Hillside's never been the same since. It's been a massive corporate festival since then, almost. Not quite, but it really blew up.
I hear what you're saying. This is part of the magic that I'm talking about, and it really is interesting. Did you come into this? Let's talk a little bit about the Aaron story, because did you come into this through music and an interest in music, or was it an interest in radio and communicating, or something else?
I came into it through George Strombolopoulos doing his co-op or internship at the Edge at Fan 590 or 1430 at the time, and the midnight show Spider Jones. I was a Nighthawk. Strombo was the first one. I would call in Storm and Norman's show. Aaron, you
By the
sound
way,
like you're 12 years
Strombo
old.
refuses to come on this podcast.
I don't know. Really? He's so good on LinkedIn.
He's just ghosting me. I know.
He's a busy guy. I'm sure he's at Pope Francis's funeral or something like that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never talked to him. He was the guy in the studio who didn't mind putting 13-year-old Aaron onto the radio to answer sports questions or bring up topics with Spider Jones. And so that was my, Chuck Swirsky, Greg Sansoni and Buck Martinez before Dan, listening to the Blue Jays and listening to the Toronto Raptors. Of course, they were a brand new team when I was growing up, and I watched that happen. My family was very into basketball. My cousin played D1 at Lafayette. My uncle was 5'9", that guy's dad. He had a 6'8" son, but he was 5'9" and stayed an extra year at Mackenzie in Toronto to play another year of high school basketball at the time. So that sports is where I came. And ultimately, and I shared this with my partner recently, when I got to university, obviously the philosophical, political world was really important to me as well. And music is big in my family as well. I've always been very into music as well. But really it was, Bob Dylan changed the world with finger pointing songs. So how do we change the world? I think sports is a huge part of that too. And we saw that over the last 5 years, what a social movement can build behind sports for good. And so I think the marrying of those worlds is what has made broadcast perfect for me. And when you say you're a little jealous, I 100% I appreciate it. And it's honestly the honor of my life to be able to do this kind of work like that in a campus community radio sphere.
What is the future then for not only CIVL, but also campus radio? Is it all online, or is there still going to be a place for people listening in their cars or actually on terrestrial radio?
Yeah, I think radio is always going to be part of the broadcast sphere until either Musk or Huawei takes over the car industry and stops having terrestrial radio in the cars. So until that time, literally, and people are going to have terrestrial radio. When we get the solar flare, your terrestrial radio is actually going to be the best way to communicate. If there's a natural disaster in the future, if the electricity, the power, the grids aren't working, this is actually a sustainable model of communique. So if you're a prepper, maybe you like it more. But
no argument for me. I'm a ham radio operator, so I've professional and amateur radio. It's all radio, and I agree 100%.
So I think there's utility in it. The government sees utility in it too, and I think corporations see leverage in it as well. Right now, it's almost a public service to a degree. It's regulated, but if we saw it being commercialized in any ways, which I don't want to do, it would be utilized differently, and we wouldn't be thinking of it as a lost technology anymore. But ultimately, where does campus radio go? I think we add the internet, and we need to add video. We're doing a video documentary, and in the video documentary, there are video music performances that we include of local and other art of the Rascals from Northern Touch are in our documentary. Name checking the Fraser Valley. That's important to us because of a video project that we did. It's something that we've only a la carte once in a while tried to really move into. We're not streaming Twitch style from the studio yet, although all of our best programmers want to do that. And so campus media as a whole, the marriage of the newspaper and the radio station at Laurier, they don't have an FM station anymore. They do have student publications, quote unquote, which operates the newspaper and the radio station. And I think that's what we would all on campuses in Canada, media literacy and media diversity are the two important roles that I think the campus newspapers and radio stations have to play. And I think we'd be smart to marry those together. I've started writing those grants. I haven't been successful yet, but I think there's technology integration. And yeah, I think we need some resources. We have a National Campus Community Radio Association for the campus community radio stations in Canada. And I think we also need campus and community media advocacy across the nation to help our newspapers and radio stations coordinate, because we all need to move beyond terrestrial radio and print media into media literacy hubs, really.
Now, the fact that you're already talking about the future of CIVL and writing grants and thinking along those ways is important, but I want to get a little bit more personal as we wrap this up. What is the future for you, for Aaron? Where do you see yourself in the next few years and maybe even in 20 years?
I mean, I've been for like 10 years recording a record. With friends and collaborators here in the Valley. You might call them country songs. On May 15th, I'll be applying a master's program at UVic that I'll be able to do remotely in community development and public administration, which I hope to complete within the next 3 years, God willing, if I'm successful. And the radio station has many, many plans that I think are really important to me. We're going to work on establishing a scholarship foundation in the near future. So that's something that, is important to me in many ways. I'd love to be able to do this work for the rest of my life. I also would love to be able to have a time in my life where I'm at least semi-retired. And those things probably aren't the most compatible in today's economy. And what does the next 20 years look like? I don't know, but I hope I'll have a master's by that point. And I definitely will always want to keep tabs on CIVL and be supportive there and be involved in campus community radio in Canada. That's never going to change, I don't think, for myself, even if it means I'm just somebody who runs every year for board of Community Radio Fund of Canada and doesn't get elected. That might be enough.
Thanks so much. What a blast talking with you. And I could hear the passion and the energy in there.
Brilliant questions. Love talking to you, Bruce. Thanks so much.
What a great chat. Thank you. Aaron Levy, Manager, Executive Director at CIVL. To read more about the station and its connected work, and of course to listen live, you can go to civl.ca.
Broadcast Chronicles is written and hosted by Bruce Claggett. Music, Follow Your Heart via Upbeat. Graphic design, Creative Shovel. I'm Sarah McKenzie. Subscribe to Broadcast Chronicles wherever you download your favorite podcasts. This has been a BFC Communications production.